Hello, and welcome to the TONMO Octopodcast. This is episode 11, where we speak with Kchristensen. He is known as Kchristensen8064 on TONMO, and he has built a cephalopod tank, which we're going to talk with him about. Also, we'll speak with him about the hatchlings and eggs that he is actively adding into the tank after acclimation. Stick around to the end because there's some interesting updates that developed over the weekend, which I'll update you on, which happened after this conversation, which was just last Friday. Despite the matching hats and beards and love of cephalopods, we're not related. We actually just met 2 weeks ago when I originally recorded this and failed to record the audio. That was a mistake. But he was kind enough to come back, so we did it this past Friday. I hope you enjoy it. All right, excellent. All right, so here we are, Kchristensen, Christopher, but the username on TONMO is Kchristensen. Thank you for joining the Octopodcast. This is episode 11. Thank you for being a TONMO member. Thank you for being a TONMO supporter.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
What got you interested in keeping octopuses? Let's start there.
It started very young when I was a kid. It's kind of always been something I've had an interest in, was octopus and the ocean in general. And but like there's certain animals you can't keep in a tank, so I picked one that that I've always kind of enjoyed. So they're fascinating to me. They're just their amount of intelligence that they have and everything else, and the amount of interaction that they tend to want to have with people. So yeah, just I started very young wanting to do saltwater stuff and loving the ocean, and got into reef tanks first. I've been doing that for about 15 years, and now that I've got the knowledge that I have, I figured it was time to challenge myself a little bit more in keeping octopus.
Excellent. And you recently got a spectacular octopus tattoo. Is that correct?
I did.
So
Yes, on my calf.
Awesome. And I'll put a picture of it up as we're talking here. But tell me about that. What brought on an octopus tattoo?
I've always wanted an octopus tattoo. I just didn't. I've got several other tattoos, including whales and everything else, but I didn't know how exactly I wanted to do that one. So my wife one day was like, "Let's." I had a cover up I wanted to do, and she's like, "Let's just do it there." And so we found a really good tattoo artist, and he's impressive as heck. And so went in there and said, "Hey, what can you do with covering this little tattoo up?" And he's like, "Well, this is what I can do," and it was amazing. And so I had him do it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on that project. So the timing coincided well with your tank build. So you've built this incredible tank. And again, we'll show some pictures. There'll be a link down in the description below that goes to the thread where you've talked about your experience. You've shared with the TONMO community your build and the progress you've made. One pivot you had to make, we'll talk about that. Tell us about the pivot and just kind of like, your overall experience with it. And I'll show some pictures along the way.
Yeah. Well, I guess my starting point was I wanted to figure out what species I wanted to go with. I looked into some of the Caribbean warmer water ones, and I was more interested in size. I wanted something that wasn't going to be huge, but I also didn't. I wasn't necessarily looking for like a pygmy. So the the bimac kind of fell right into that size range I was looking for, and so that's kind of what started it. Because I did my research on what species I wanted first, and I knew I was going to kind of challenge myself with the cold water species, but um, I really liked the species, and so that's kind of where it started. And then I started trying to find a tank at that point. Um, I know I know the tank I have is a little bit bigger for a bimac than what most people typically do. They do 75 to 90. Um, but it's what became available to me. And like I said, I started off with a completely different tank that I had picked up for free that I found online, and sat in my garage for 6 months, just waiting to get started on. And I guess what kind of really jump started things is I found another tank became available, a much nicer tank, also for free because it had a failure in the seams. And so I was like, well, shoot, this is a really nice tank. I can't pass it up. I'm willing to reseal it. So went down, drove all the way down to Denver, picked it up, and brought it home. And it sat in the garage for a couple of months. And then I finally just decided to get rolling on it because I kind of had some goals in mind. I wanted to, my original plan was to have everything up and running by the end of the year. And obviously that didn't happen, but I knew I had to get started at some point if I was even going to come close to it. So uh, started pulling it apart in the garage, cutting all the seams out and cleaning them up, and started to kind of process. I'd done some reseals on some much smaller tanks, which are very simple, and so I figured, oh, how hard could it be? So once I got it all cleaned up and got the glass polished, I started reassembling it, and um, I did not go about it the right way the first time. I underestimated the challenge of glass of that size and that weight and how quick you have to work with silicone. So yeah, it got it all put together, got it all sealed up, let it dry for a few days, took a look at it, and I'm like, I really don't like the way this looks. And so I had to make the tough call to start all over and tear it all apart again. So that's
Yeah.
my pivot.
Decision, but clearly the right one. If you're not, I mean, because you don't want to have that mistake. I get tired of saying this, and this is probably why I didn't say it at the top of this podcast, but I have to say it now. I'm not an expert. Never kept an octopus. Never kept a saltwater tank for that matter. I just find them to be amazing creatures, and I started this website, TONMO.com, 25 years ago, just because I thought, again, cephalopods were incredible creatures. Started with a focus on octopus and squid. Actually, giant squid was a focus, and remains so today. But what I didn't anticipate was that it would attract such an audience of cephalopod keepers and aquarium keepers such as yourself.
Yeah.
So that a lot of my comments and questions are always coming from a place of ignorance here because I've never done it, but I've observed and I've been observing for a long time. Um, People keeping tanks, and I know how hard it is, and that's another reason why I probably, for me personally, more inclined to not keep one, just because I know what a tremendous responsibility and amount of effort, and it takes skill too. The work that you've done on this tank is not something that somebody off the street could do. Quite honestly, obviously you've got a lot of experience. Let's talk a little bit about that. Like, you're crafty, you build stuff. I mean, how would you describe your skills as it relates to putting this kind of stuff together?
Yeah, no, I've always been very crafty and very creative, and so this wasn't my first tank build ever. I've done numerous others in the past with reef tanks, but yeah, I mean, I work in a wood shop, so kind of wood is kind of something I work with a lot, and I really enjoy. And so, yeah, when it comes to a build, I want it to be aesthetically pleasing as well, and it also keeps the family happy when it blends in with the rest of the decor in the house. And so that's my goal every time I build a system is just to make it I get pretty
Yeah, I
and
mean that tank
make it a
behind you.
furniture piece.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that tank
yeah,
behind you
that's
is
my
gorgeous.
that's my reef tank.
Absolutely gorgeous in terms of what's going on inside it, but also the furniture itself, as you just mentioned. You want your tank to be an attractive piece of furniture. You certainly accomplished that. So you had a couple of hatchlings come your way.
Yes.
Turns out that TM Oct, again, who we spotlighted in our last Octopodcast, turns out he doesn't live all that far away from where you live, and so you had an opportunity to go visit and do a rescue, if you will, of
Yep.
a lot of hatchlings that he had on his hands. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I never intended to get hatchlings. My goal was to let the new tank cycle for 4 to 6 months, and then get one through likely through the site there. Um, but Yeah, there was another member, and I can't think of his username at the time, but I was following along with TM Oct and his hatching and Mac and everything, and another user private messaged me and said, "Hey, you should hit this guy up and see if he's willing to give you a few." And it didn't dawn on me right then and there. I started looking into it, and I wrote TM Oct a private message, and then it was after I'd sent that I realized, oh, he's in the same state that I am. And then come to find out, he's only 20 minutes away. So at
It's
that
awesome.
point, it's like, yeah, I think I've got another setup downstairs that I could turn into a nursery tank, and it was actually going to be my my live food tank for the bimac, and so I just pivot and turned it into a little nursery tank, and went and met up with TM Oct, and
Yeah, I think I saw a couple of photos in the thread uh, early on, and I'll put it up if I'm correct about this, where you had a smaller tank that had partitions in it. Is that the one that you're referring to?
yeah, and it didn't have the partitions in it. I added those and just kind of being prepared. I was picking up 5 baby bimacs, and so I didn't realize at first just how small they are. And so when I went and met with TM Oct and kind of saw how he was managing the babies, with his containers and everything. Originally I had put the partitions in there so they could all have their own little section part of the tank, but he's like, if you throw them in there now, you'll probably never see them again. So that was another pivot I made
Yeah.
where I started using containers in there, and if it gets big enough, as you know, I'm down to 1 out of the 5.
Yeah.
But if the one he's doing great, or she, and if it continues to do well, then it'll eventually come out of the container and just be in one of those partition sections of the tank by itself until I feel it's large enough to move to the big tank.
Yeah, we'll talk about the big tank too. I was looking at it in the awesome cave that you set up. But before we go there, so right, so Tiamat had originally thought Mac was a male, turned out to
Yeah,
be female, laid eggs. I think we thought that I know I didn't see the eye spots in one of the photos, so my non-expert opinion, I was like, I don't think those are fertile eggs, and it's pretty rare for them to be fertile,
yeah,
especially when they're acquired fairly young. But as proven, and it has been proven many times in the past, they it doesn't take them long. They can reproduce pretty young. In Tiamoc's case, I think he said he had something like 30 or so hatchlings. Again, too much to kind of successfully rear on your own. You
yeah.
can create partitions. You can put them, in side containers until they're old enough, strong enough to make their way in a tank. But cannibalization happens a lot. Whether they're out in their natural habitat or whether they're in a home tank. So you got 5 of them. You brought them home in um, in separate containers, as I understand it, for the
Correct.
20-minute ride home. You brought it home. You did a drip acclimation or some
Yep.
kind of a acclimation into your what was your feeder tank originally, and kind of got them acclimated into that tank
Yes.
separately. Lost a few of them, not all at the same time, but over time. Now you're basically air quote down to 1. How many weeks ago? Just so people have a sense of like timing. How long has it been since you brought them home to where we are now with the one that you have remaining?
Well, I believe they were born or hatched on February 15th, and it
Yeah.
was less than a week. I think it was less than a week after that before I had brought some home. I think it was a weekend or two following. I don't remember what days were what, but
Hmm.
so they were only about a week old when I got them, and I had all 5 of them for right up until about a month, until they were about a month old, and then that's when I started. That's when you kind of start seeing some of them grow a little bit more than others, and I'd witnessed every single one of them feeding, and so I knew that they were all feeding. So um as far as why all of a sudden you start seeing that separation in size, I don't know. But yeah, two of them kind of jumped out right away. Um, got a little bit bigger than the other three, and then those three just kind of never seemed to grow, and they just stayed small, and then they started slowing down, and unfortunately, within I think it was just a few days, I had lost all three of those ones, the ones that weren't showing any signs of growth. And then, yeah, and then I was down to two, and one of them, like I said, it started growing, and then it just stopped and started slowing down. And then, so I kind of knew where that was going. And sure enough, a few days later, I found that one had passed. And so, yeah, I've got the one left. So far, it's doing great. I've got my fingers crossed.
Yeah.
It's very active every time I'm down there feeding. It's out and about. It's inquisitive.
Excellent.
Um, yeah, so I've got high hopes for that one, but at the same time, I realistically know that it's tough. So, well, I guess just time will tell.
Uh, for situational awareness for everyone. So yeah, again, they hatched on February 15th. The date of this recording is April 4th. So you're just about 10 days away from being at the 2 month mark, which is a good uh, you know threshold, I guess, for want of a better word, for survival of an
Yeah.
individual specimen. So best of luck with continued success there. Now there's some other eggs that have kind of like come up within the community, and you saw that as an opportunity. Maybe let's talk about that for a minute.
Maybe I'm just crazy. I don't know. I think my wife thinks that I am, but no, yeah, those popped up from Tampa Bay on the site there, and I was like, wow, I've got another tank already running, and it's a warm water tank. There's one fish in it, so I was like, let's give this a try, and it's Atlantic pygmy.
Yeah,
And so, I quickly started doing my research on those and realized that they're really short lived, maybe 6 months if you're lucky,
yeah.
a year if you're luckier. But yeah, they had a rock with eggs on it that they were looking to find a home for, and I was like, shoot, let's send it my way. And so, um, yeah, it ended up being delayed a day in transit, and so it took 2 days to get here instead of one. And opened up, yeah, got the package here, opened it up, and to my surprise, um, they had all hatched in transit. So I had a bag with baby octopus about the size of a pea,
Wow.
and they were everywhere. And it took me quite a while to get them out of that bag. So
I can believe that. Yeah. So in 2 days in transit, that's long time for any octopus of any age to be in transit. That's why we always encourage, but it happens, right? Like, we can't control all the logistics from Tampa Bay to where you are.
yeah,
By the way, the member there, another supporter, shout out to Live Rock is the name of the member who posted that availability, and they're affiliated with their store, Tampa Bay Saltwater, I believe.
yep.
So okay, so you got a bag full of live pygmy octopuses, but size of a pea. How did that go in terms of acclimating, and where does it stand today?
No, it went fine. I didn't find one single, I guess, dead one at all sorting through that whole thing. I pulled the rock out. There was a ton on the rock, and gosh knows how many were inside the rock because it's very porous. And then, yeah, there were probably about 50 of them stuck to the edge of the bag, and so it was quite tedious because I had to individually scoop get everyone off the bag because they had suctioned themselves to the bag,
Yeah.
and then got them all into a little bucket with their rock, and then started drip acclimating them. And once I got that all acclimated, then I moved them into the tank. I've got an acclimation box that they're all kind of in right now with the rock. And then I just loaded it up with amphipods, and they immediately went to town on amphipods. So that was a good sign. They were feeding right up right away. And so yeah, they've been there ever since. My plan this weekend is to try and sort some of them out and separate them and try and get some sort of count, because I really don't know where I'm at right now with them. But I know when they first showed up, there was well over 50.
Okay, so you have some number of pygmy octopuses, and you'd like to keep at least one. And then you have this bimac, which is on a good path. Who gets the cave? It's kind of like
Like, well, I made the cave for a bimac because it's a much bigger species. So
yeah,
that's that's more for a full grown bimac would be able to fit in there if it wanted to. But
right.
yeah, I had a whole bunch of rock laying around, and I was like, well, I'm gonna break out the super glue in the sand, and I'm gonna build a cave. So that's what I did.
Very cool. I hope the bimac takes to it. I'll look forward to
Yeah, I do
those
too.
pictures. Right. What is the size of the bimac tank? How many gallons is it?
It's 110 gallons.
110. Nice.
Yeah.
So you've been engaged in this project pretty intently for a few months, both building out a physical tank and
Mhm.
preparing for the reception of octopuses, which you've done. What advice would you have for people who are watching this who are like, "Man, I want to do that. That sounds amazing and looks amazing." Recognizing that you're still early on it. This is your first foray with cephalopods, but all that said, you've
Yeah.
come a long way. So, and it's all fresh. So, what's your take?
Um, it's not as complicated as I thought it was going to be. I think the hardest part is food. Yeah, it's hard finding live food, and so I was happy to know that TM Oct was using amphipods and he was having success with those, because those are pretty easy to get. But I will say that it gets expensive really quick.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I've purchased well over 5,000 amphipods at this point.
Hmm.
So yeah, and it's just a matter of I'm kind of following in his footsteps and doing what he seems to be working for him,
Yeah,
and making sure that there's a constant supply of food in the containers with them. So when they're hungry and they want to eat, they can. They don't have to sit there and wait for me to come feed them. I want it available to them, and so um, for quite a while now, they've got anywhere between 20 to 50 amphipods in their containers at any one time. And I've done grass shrimp. I know he had purchased some of those and um, has kind of shied away from them due to he felt that he was having some loss because of them.
yeah,
I haven't experienced that. They But at the same time, my bimac has not shown any interest whatsoever in the grass shrimp. So it's they're in there and they help keep his little tank clean, but it's been all amphipods from this point on. So or from for now. Just hoping that I can get him to a size where some other options might come into play. Um,
yeah,
I've tried a couple of frozen options and I haven't had any luck with those. And yeah,
yeah.
I keep trying, and it's trial and error, and we'll see where it goes.
Maybe I don't know this to be true or not, but maybe it gets easier as they get older or more stable and mature to introduce frozen. Kind of feel like I remember reading that somewhere, but I may be
Yeah.
off. Do you have any um, differences in your approach between the pygmy and the bimac, the pygmies and the bimac, in terms of care, the way you intend to, aside from the fact that pygmies much smaller, will be in a smaller space, but any thoughts around like feeding or what you're feeding, or are they both? Um, a bimac is a daytime octopus, which is really helpful. I forget, is a pygmy also daytime or are they
I
nocturnal?
No, I believe they're nocturnal. Yeah, I don't when I'm down there during the day, I might see one or two here or there that's kind of hanging out in the corner. So I haven't been down there yet at night to see what's going on. It might be a whole other story at night.
Yeah, interesting.
But yeah, I'll have to do that. But yeah, no, I'm taking the same approach because it's shown to work with the bimac.
Hmm.
Um, and I have already know that they're interested in the amphipods because I put those in when I first got them, and almost all of them immediately started eating amphipods. So I know they're capable. And so, yeah, I'm taking the same approach with them. The only thing I think I've done different is I've added brine shrimp, something a little smaller in case they wanted a different offering, just because they're so much smaller than the bimac. But yeah, so I'm constantly hatching brine shrimp and feeding those too. But they also feed my grass shrimp tank, so uh, I've got a whole tank of probably 200 plus grass shrimp down there.
It spirals, doesn't it? After a
Yeah.
while, it's like, oh, I'd like to have a an octopus tank, and then, but of course, I need the feeder, and this is where your family comes in, and it needs to, at least the furniture needs to look nice, and needs to be attractive in the home, which again, it definitely is. Super cool tanks you have going on. Really appreciate you sharing it with the TOMO community, of course, because it's all about providing access to people who are interested in learning more about cephalopods. We can't learn enough. One of the great things about TONMO is that it has traditionally connected scientists and hobbyists together. Scientists are keenly interested in reading what hobbyists are doing and how they're going about doing it, what's succeeding and what's not. They're ready to give help in the forums, but at the same time, they ask questions and they're ready to learn too, because keeping cephalopods in, whether it's a home aquarium or in a lab, it's hard, and
Yeah.
and there's still so much to learn, not just about their behaviors and what drives the various hundreds of species of cephalopods, but only a few of which are adequate for home tanks, by the way. People who go through the process of caring for cephalopods in their home aquariums actually are creating a lot of content, a lot of information that is of value to, again, hobbyists, scientists, etc. So appreciate you sharing what you're sharing. I'm looking forward to the journals. So once again, it's Kchristensen on TONMO. Am I pronouncing that correct, by the way?
Yeah.
Kchristensen on TONMO. Link below in the description will take you to his thread called what's the name of the thread? My Ceph Tank or
My
Ceph Tank
first,
Build?
my first Steph tank, maybe I think is what it's called.
Yeah, it's become a pretty epic thread with, again, a lot of twists and turns. So it's fun to read from the beginning. So that link is below, and would definitely like to have you back as this develops, and get some more of your learnings, and hopefully we get to learn about the personality of the octopuses that you're keeping.
Yeah.
Again, really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining, and we'll have you again soon.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, that was great catching up with Christopher for the second time. And one of the developments over the weekend, there were a couple. One was he discovered a lot more eggs as he was breaking down the live rock that had come with the shipment. But very importantly, he does not believe that these are pygmy octopuses. He actually believes they're octopus mercatories. And I'm sharing some pictures of that right now. Let me know in the comments. Let us know if you think that what ID the species is. Mercatories is a guess. Maybe somebody out there with more direct experience can confirm this. But now Christopher has a lot of hatchlings and eggs on his hands. Definitely follow along with this conversation in the link below. And thanks for watching the Octopodcast. We'll be back again soon.